Okay, here I'm going to talk about idea generation for problem solutions. So what I'm going to focus on in this session is how you could use 40 inventive principles to propose to come up with new ideas for problem solutions. Then, how to generate the idea of problem solutions. As I mentioned, 40 inventive principles can be applied. I think this strategy could apply for known conflicts. It may be applied for unknown conflicts as well, but you need to have strong confidence with your hypothesis. Um, so this is a result of your redefinition of the problem. Template for problem definition. After redefining a problem, your problem should be described by the should be described as combination of smaller conflicts. So you could say if you introduce system, these conflicts appears. Then the problems you are solving must be something like this. Component is positively acting on another component, but component negatively acts on some other components. As I have introduced, the conflicts could be categorized into plural number of patterns. And for problem solving, what you need to do is effectively separate the portion which is source of the negative state and eliminate it. Now, how you could do is it's very simple. So you need to separate some of the components. Then how you can separate is probably only four types. How the methodology which you could separate something is categorized into the following four types. So you separate the strategy for problem solution is like this: separate and eliminate considering space or time or condition, and the part and the whole, very similar to the how you could think about hypothesis for generation mechanisms of a problem. Anyway, effective 40 inventive principles are identified for each of the strategies. What you should do to separate and eliminate considering space? So you need to ask yourself this question and try to answer the question. So where component acts on another component should happen, and where component acts on component should not happen. So which portion the positive action is required, and while which portion negative action is not required. So to generate solution ideas, so taking these questions into consideration, then you should refer the following 40 inventive principles. Then you may come up with something good. Then, when you are thinking about separating and eliminating, considering the time, so what you need to think is try to answer these questions. When the component positively acts on another component should happen, or when this positive function should happen, and when the function related to negative states should not happen. To generate solution ideas with considering time, you should refer the following 40 inventive principles. Then you could separate and eliminate things considering condition. In such case, you need to try to answer the question in which conditions the function related to positive states should happen, and in which condition the function related to negative states should not happen. Then, taking these questions into consideration, you may refer these 40 inventive principles. Then next is how you may separate and eliminate considering the part and whole. Or you may use these 40 inventive principles. So for example, of problem solving exploiting separation between the part and the whole, chain is a very good example of this methodology, of this strategy. Chain, you can imagine chain is partially hard, but the whole is flexible. So you can imagine that chain includes two factors. It tends to be made from steel, so it is very hard, but it's very flexible. It could be used for tightening something. Then different way of thinking angle is recognized trimming, adapting the way of thinking, how one may eliminate a component that generates action, negative action. Um, the strategy of the thinking is like this. For example, component 1 positively acting on component 2, but component 1 is negatively acting on component 2. So if just imagining what happens if you eliminate component 1. So the negative action obviously eliminated, but positive action also eliminate. So the first definition of problem could be transformed into different situation. So if you think from starting from this viewpoint, you may come up with something new. So then what we should do for this positive action, eliminated positive action. Then, so adapting the way of thinking, how one may eliminate a component that generate negative action, then what you should do. So you could think about, so the putting the positive action into upper order system. So let some component in upper order system behaves to complete the positive action, or you may move the positive function to alternative system or inverse system, or you may something in lower order system may be alternative. So that is how you could apply the trimming strategy for generating new idea. Then next strategy is shift action, positive action to lower order system. You may apply these 40 inventive principles. Then when you are thinking about let some components in upper order system do something instead of the current function, you may apply these 40 inventive principles. Then you may use alternative system. You could apply cheap short living objects for the inventive, which is one of the 40 inventive principle. Then also similarly reverse system. Then this is all for this session. You may use what I have introduced here to come up with to produce some solution against some conflict.